Hey gang, Mocha Boy here. Got another great video for you today. This is something that I've been wanting to cover for a long time because this is one of those little black arts that allow me to do a lot of the things that I do with the FPV rigs that I have. An unfortunate reality of multi-rotors is that they are space constrained, and anytime you have a length of wire running across any of this, anywhere in the system, those have the potential for either emitting or receiving radiated energy from anywhere else in the system. The end result is you get a lot of noise, and really one of the best ways to combat that, as well as just in general how to neaten up your rig, is to do your own custom wiring harnesses. Now with a lot of the with a lot of the equipment that you buy, you get these extremely bulky connectors. They're enormous, and a lot of times you don't need that entire length of cable, especially running around on a space constrained and weight sensitive multi-rotor. So it's important to make sure that you're tightening up the wiring as much as possible. So just really quickly, the tools that we're going to be using for this. This is probably my favorite tool on my bench, and I've said this before, but if this ever broke or if I ever lost it, I'd be on Amazon in 15 seconds to buy another one. So the Engineer PA09. You can pick this up on Amazon for about 50 bucks, and I'll throw a link down in the description so you can see that. Paladin, and for my wire stripper, I mean, obviously you can use anything you want, but I've had really great success with this Paladin Tools P20, the Grip P20. Now this is nice because it has both a cutter for wiring, for the wires, as well as all the way down to 30 gauge wire, and high quality, very sharp. And one of the other nice things that I like about these tools are these little thumb locks, just to keep them, kind of tucked away in your, and compact in your toolbox. So really great tools there. I use these probably every day with all the wiring that I do. Now, in terms of crimping connectors, there's a few ways to do it. You can. Let me see here. You absolutely can use regular servo wire, but the problem with servo wire is that it tends to be very, very thick. This is an example of 26 gauge silicone wire. I mean, obviously this is a little overkill for what we're trying to do, but I use this for a lot of the power wiring that I have on my rigs. Servo wire is going to be about 24 gauge, and it's really, really thick, and it's not going to fit in a little itty bitty connector like that. So you're going to have to source your own wire. And what I did was I went on eBay, and what you do is you search for 28 AWG 7-stranded or just stranded wire, and you should see some suppliers come up. These rolls were about 10 meters in length for about $3, and just a quick tip here: if you do end up buying wire from there, make sure that you get red, black, and yellow. And probably twice the amount of, and probably twice the capacity of all the other wires that you get. You'll use 3-pin connectors, probably more than anything else, and then obviously power, red and black for power, and then yellow for signal. And then after that, I mean, you're free to buy whatever colors you want. I bought 6 colors, the other ones being white, blue, and then I have purple kind of sitting off to the side here somewhere. This is. Now the reason that I chose 28 gauge and not 30 gauge is because 30 gauge is so thin that it probably wouldn't survive a lot of plugging and unplugging. Now the 28 gauge is just thick enough that it'll fit within a Picoblade connector housing and still be robust enough for you to be able to pull in and out. So yeah, my vote's gone in for 28 gauge. I did buy some 30 also, but I don't think I'll be using it as much as this. I'll probably just use that for any custom builds. So let's take a look at some of the connectors. You're going to have to place a few orders for some of these things, but actually let's look at the equipment just so that you can get a sense for where all of this plays. So, from left to right, this is the PZ0420/600 TVL camera. This is something that a lot of FPVers use. The housings on here are 3-pin Picoblade connectors. Now, at least in the US, they're branded as Picoblade, but they're knockoffs of these. All you need to know is that the Picoblade connectors will fit in there. There's two versions of them on digikey. You can buy the branded Picoblade connector, or you can buy, I think there's a knockoff version from T&E Connectivity. You just have to search for, you have to look through the thread. I've posted the links to those digikey products so that you can get them. And you know, typically you're going to buy these in 3-pin, 2-pin, 4-pin, and even up to 6, 8, and 10, depending on what component you're working on. But typically speaking, you'll be making connectors for things like your GPS. This is a Crius. So that's the connector right there. You'll make a 3-pin connector, and if you notice there, I snapped off the edge here because all I had were 4-pin connectors until I finally went out and ordered the 3-pin connectors for these. So now that fits perfectly in there. And then onto the Open Pilot gear. Open Pilot uses they use JST SH connectors. And if you look, you know, under digikey using those search terms, you'll be able to find all of their connectors, and you'll find them in 4-pin, as well as for the Revo board, you'll need a 10-pin housing, but for a CC3D, it's just an 8. And then, yeah. So I mean, in terms of which housings to buy and in what quantity, I mean, honestly, it really depends on what you're flying. And you know, what you have the capacity to wait for. I mean, when I started early out, I just bought everything under the sun. And, you know, it turns out that I maybe only use you know, half of these. Down here are the JST SH housings for the Open Pilot gear, and you'll notice they tend to be just a little bit longer than the Picoblade housings. The Picoblade housings are over here. Now, just a quick tip: when you're searching on digikey for these housings, and when you find the product, there's a section in the descriptions that show mating products as well as associated products. And a lot of times, you're going to need to source the associated crimp pins that go with these. These are the ones that I bought. These came in a bag of 100 from eBay, and I've been going through these a little bit at a time. But these are what I use for the Picoblade connectors. These work, and they work just fine. And one of the things that I am going to show you is how to use the PA09 to solder, to crimp those in. But yeah, I mean, these are typically the types of connectors that you're going to be working with. If you don't want to, you know, if you don't want to crimp, that's totally fine. It is a very time-consuming process, but you know, the results are striking. And let me show you a little bit about what I'm talking about there. On one of the very first rigs that I ever built. On one of the very first rigs that I ever built, this was a Hoverthings FPV, or Flip FPV. I mean, this wiring is actually fairly decent, but even this is kind of a rat's nest. I don't know if you can really see in there. And this is everything. It's flight controller, OSD, 3DR radio, camera, and all of the power connectors and sensor connectors that go into that. I mean, this is about as tight as I could get this particular rig, but even this is a mess. I mean, it's just not pretty to look at. When you make your own wiring, you know, you can do something like this. And what this is this is a 3D printed mini version of the QAV 400 that I popped out on my 3D printer. But I mean, there's almost no wire runs on here, and as you can see, I've got a power distribution plate right up here that goes into the 5.8 gigahertz receiver, and you know, these were some just little quick connectors that I whipped up. Power goes in here, power goes out through there, and then feeds the camera, and then the camera comes up and feeds a video signal back into here. It's very, very tight, very, very neat wiring. I mean, there's just not a lot going on there, and yep, so that's what that looks like. And then, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this on camera. I'll have to pull this off later, but this is a rig that I just finished for a local flyer. It's a Hoverthings FPV Pro, the one that comes with a clean plate. Yeah, you know what, I'm probably going to have to get another angle here. Just give me 2 seconds. Yeah, so, apologize for the angle here, but I just wanted to show you what the wiring looked like on here. There's probably not a single wire on this entire rig that wasn't crimped or otherwise shortened. You know, receiver connector going into the APM board. These are sensor inputs over here that go up into you know, the GPS plate up there, all cut to length. So what really made me happy was the wiring for the OSD and telemetry system is all right over here. I mean, and it's about as neat as you could possibly make it. And as you noticed, or if you notice rather, one of the things that I did do was use standard servo header connectors. This makes it a lot easier to handle because these are just easier to work with in general. And you know, so snip off the micro connectors if you don't want them, and just, you know, stick on regular servo pin connectors. But this is all of the wiring to power the camera, the Minim OSD, 3DR radio over on the side, telemetry wires, power wires, everything, all in one nice and tight little harness there. Very happy with how that turned out. And I mean, in general, you're not going to see a lot of wiring anywhere on the rig. I did the best I could to minimize all of the cable runs, you know, just to make sure that you know, they weren't picking up noise interference or emitting it. So yeah, that's what crimping gets you. All right, so really quickly, you guys might recognize this. This is you know, $15 crimper that you're all probably pretty familiar with. I'm pretty sure everyone has at least one of these, or at least started out with one of these. This is about as awful a tool as I could imagine, but you know, when I bought this, I didn't really know any better. This pretty much just sits and collects dust now because it's really only good for 26 gauge or 24 gauge wires. Now what's interesting about this is that this can do everything this can, but with just a few extra steps. And you know, I don't know if you can notice the, let's see if I can get focus going on in there. I don't know if you notice just how nice the ridging is on this, and how these were milled out. Those little curves there ensure that when the connectors come in, they curl in and bite into the outer coating, and gives you a really good connection. These pretty much aren't worth anything at this point, and I've stopped using these because I've actually had crimps come apart with this. If anything, if I'm lazy, maybe I'll, you know, do one crimp to get it to hold, but then I'll go in and clean up the crimps with this. So I'm going to crimp two connectors here. I mean, I'm assuming you guys will know how to work with you know, standard servo pin headers. These are pretty simple to use, but let's see if I can just get a piece of wire here. In terms of length, you know, TLAR, that looks about right. I don't really have a set length for how much coating I like to strip off. I mean, that's usually about enough. And generally speaking, what you want is the coating to end at right about there. I don't know if that's coming through in the focus, but you need to give the header, the crimp pin, something to grab onto, and then something to actually connect to the electrical portion of the wiring. So with this, the first thing I'll do is just crimp on the bottom just so that it stays. Then I'll turn it around and then use the 1.9 millimeter crimp. And that just gets it to hold on. I'm not doing anything too crazy there because I have to go back and dress that up. Next maneuver is to just slightly crush the profile of the section that connects with the wiring, and then I come in with the 1.4 pitch crimp. And then, interesting thing here, what'll happen is if you pull down right now, this will bend down slightly, so you're going to want to put your thumb right about there just to keep it from bending, and then go ahead and compress. Now what I said before about this 1.4, we're going to come in and dress the shoulder here. So I'm going to use the flat portion of this to just squeeze the profile just a tiny little bit, and this is necessary for it to go into the servo header housing cleanly. And then just finish it off with one more quick tap right there. And you've got a housing. Now, just a tip here, if you are running into issues with the length of the wiring, if it doesn't slide in neatly with no effort, then it's probably too wide. So you definitely need to come in with that 1.4 to get them to fit nicely in these housings. And by the way, these pins and housings, you can buy these on Pololu or on digikey if that's your thing. But the female pins. These come in a roll of about 100. They're $6. Buy these in a 2-to-1 ratio to the male pins. You'll use these more than you'll use these. But yeah, you can get these plus these connectors at Pololu for, I just put in an order there for like $20, and then that'll set you up for a really long time. All right, so that's the servo pin connector. Now onto the more challenging Picoblade connectors. These are really, really tiny. Now you have to be really delicate with these, and you have to be delicate with these for a reason. I'm going to show you really quickly. If you were to go in here and just start mashing down on your crimper, bad things are going to happen. You really need a delicate touch to be able to handle these. And let's see there. I don't know if you can see this, but I've got the shoulder, I've got the arms that grab the outer coating, and then the outer coating that stops right at the area of the crimp that connects with the actual wire. So I've got this plugged in between 2 fingers, and then I'm just going to go in and crimp those arms really softly. Now on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being barely enough pressure and then 10 being, Herculean effort, I would say that, come in with about a 5. You want this part to be very delicate. So now the way that I've lined this up is I have the arms just about flush with the edge of the crimper. Let's see if I can get that a little closer. And then just come in and crimp. And this is not the final crimp, this is just to get the crimp to hold on. So that's fine. Now the next part, and again the key to doing this is doing it in stages. There's a locking tab. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. But there's a locking tab just on the edge of this. You want that locking tab to go flush with this bottom pin right here. Just like that. And then when everything's nice, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say, apply about a 6 or 7 in pressure. You don't want to do it too much or too little. And then that is what your crimp looks like. Now there's one last step here, and you have to dress those arms because this is 28 gauge wire. It's still just too wide to fit into the housing, so you want to use the flat part of your PA09 to just squeeze the profile of that ever so slightly. Now I say ever so slightly because now you've taken the arms and the fingers that curled in and pushed them up. So one last step here you have to do is come back in and just redress that. And then again, just stick your thumb there because it will bend down just a hair. And then that's it. And the same rule applies for this connector. If you are pushing this into the housing and it requires a little bit of effort, you probably it's probably too wide. So let's see if I did a good job here. Now obviously the tab portion is going to mate with that locking tab right there, and if you ever needed to pull these out, all you have to do is just stick a needle in there. Let's see. A little bit of effort, but not too much. And perfect, see, it goes right in. Now the reason that you need to get the profile right, if you get the profile wrong, these tiny thin walls that separate the wires will deform. And then over the course of time, they could even fail. And the last thing you want is your power wire shorting to your ground line. So you absolutely want to make sure that the width of these crimps is small enough so that this fits in with little to no pressure. A little pressure is fine, just so that it stays solid. And give it a little tug test. Make sure that it's nice and tight. And yeah, so that's that crimp. This tool will do every single one of the micro connectors. So this will take care of JST XH pins for batteries, SH pins for the open pilot boards. I've used this also for the high-rose DF13 connectors on the Arducopter boards. Making those are a real pain, but this will do them. Like I said, it's just all about time and technique. You want to do this in stages, and again, if you were to do this just a little too hard, let's see what happens. You can actually crush the connector and split it. So that's what I was talking about. When you go to actually crimp this down, just make sure that you're applying about a 5 to get the fingers to dig into the arms, and then about a 6 or 7 to get the actual wire part of the crimp down. And if you crimp too hard, I mean, that's what happens there. So yeah, I'll drop the links to the products down in the description, and if you have any questions or comments about how this is done, one other thing I did want to point out is if you're looking for the links to some of these connectors, and you didn't come here from FPV Lab, do a search for the official connector thread with FPV Lab, or so official connector thread FPV Lab, and you should see all of the connectors that we use for our RC gear. And oh, you know what? Before I forget, just one more thing. I forgot to mention that I've been slowly moving over to some of these latching connectors. You're going to want to find these as well in 2-pin connectors, and I use these almost exclusively for power connections. That's one thing that you don't want to get wrong, you know, as far as plugging these in backwards. So these take a lot of the guesswork out of that. And there's just one other tip that I wanted to mention, only because I do so much wiring, and this happened to me just as early as last night. When you get to the end of a crimping session, automatically say to yourself, I plugged in 2 wires wrong. And then it's your job for the next 2 to 3 minutes to go over your rig and make sure that you plugged everything in right. And don't ever think that you got it right, because I can guarantee you that at some point you will miss a wire, or you'll flip the orientation of something wrong. And you know, when you've been doing this for about 2 or 3 hours at a time, it's very easy to reverse connections. So just stop, make an assumption that you got some wires wrong. Go in and double check your wiring before you apply power. Or if you have a current limited power supply, that's also great. But yeah, just a helpful tip there to save you from the magic smoke. So yeah, that's about it. Hope you thought that was helpful. If you have any questions, or if there's any other gear here that you need me to show you, just drop it in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.